oldest, I'm not sure. But the point of the story is that he took it from there. Now at this point, I know I got to call his sister. Have to call his sister immediately. And so my son, before we got to the calling of his sister, my youngest son had gotten off the bus. He was walking down the street and he saw his mother talking to people in the driveway. I'm sure he thought, well, what is this? What's going on? Who are these people talking to my mom? And when he got in the driveway, at that point, my oldest son had came out of the house. So now we're all together in the garage, and the officer said to me, ma'am, do you want to tell him what happened? And I said, no, sir, I want you to tell him. And so he said, it's been an incident, guys. I don't even remember the words with them. At this point, I'm in a fog, but he said, you know, your father, it's been an incident and your father didn't make it. And I just remember it being a moment of just almost silence. I mean, it just was crazy. And my youngest one was so instantly angry. He just couldn't believe he was hearing what he was hearing. He just threw his backpack down and he just couldn't believe it. And he just went into the house, slammed the door. I mean, he was just obviously shocked, like we all were. My oldest son, who already had prepared, he didn't have any information, but remember, he's the one that was here who opened the door. So he is the one that has been texting and all those things to his father. So he knew something was going on and old enough to know there's a lot happening. And he might have even been hearing us in the garage for all I know. I never really asked him. But I said, we got to call his sister. We've got to call Sheila. We've got to call his sister. And I said, I got to call her. And I kept saying it, but I couldn't even dial her number. I kept saying, okay, I got to call. He just said, Mom, I'll take the phone. And he took the phone. And he called his aunt. And he told her, he said, you know, I just remember her telling me later that he said to her, you know, your brother has been killed. And I guess she was like me, just in shock. I mean, how do you take that, like what? And I don't know how it was said. It wasn't verbatim, but the point of the story was, she said, the one thing I do remember this line very well, she said that he told her, my father, your brother, was killed. And of course, whatever else was transpired in that moment, maybe a few questions, I don't know, but I was in another zone. And I think she told me, okay, you know, she's going to pick up, she's got something she's going to do right now, and she's on her way. And so from that point forward, I have to assume she made phone calls because a lot of the brothers found out. And then I know my parents, maybe they called, my aunts. I don't know all the details. They may have told me that since then. This is a year now. And I'm sure I've heard many stories of who called who, and I do know some of those stories very well. But it was a moment that I'll never forget. And now I'll give you what exactly happened. And I want to share this part here. Below on this video, I'm going to have some links. And the link that I'm putting up is actually the person, the predator that shot my husband in the back. And he actually had a history of this. So now, how did all this transpire? My husband was headed to work that day, now that I know the details. And apparently he was looking for this moped. It was a Craigslist item. And this was a local media story. So the local news anchors had come out to interview me and talk about the story. And at that time I was saying that Craigslist should be shut down. I was very angry, and actually, and thought now, obviously, you know, a murderer can be anywhere. A person that's willing to take somebody's life, it doesn't have to be Craigslist, it can be anywhere. And we all do our diligence. And I want to add this part in. My husband was not naive to the streets. He knew about, you know, crime. This was nothing new in terms of people being kind of, you know, in other words, he knew, you know, the setting. He was comfortable to kind of figure out sometimes, like, this does not seem right, I'm not going to be here. So that's one check he had. And the other part was with Craigslist, he had sold items on Craigslist before. He had purchased some great buys on Craigslist. It's from the prior couple of years, actually. And so he was comfortable. And he also knew about the Craigslist killers you always would hear about, and certain crimes that would come up. Somebody met somebody for something. So he wasn't walking around like, oh, okay, I'm going to go get something. But this predator, this 17-year-old predator, had actually served time in the juvenile system for the same type of crime, a Craigslist thing. And at that time, he didn't murder anyone that we know of. You know, there's crimes all the time that go unsolved, but he was in the juvenile system for robbing people using the Craigslist technique. And I say technique because he actually would strategize using this. And he came out, and do you know, and I'm going to throw a lot of things at different places, my husband was killed on September 7th, 2016, that he had actually committed another crime on September 5th, 2 days before that. And this particular witness was a great, in terms of his transcript for his own case, was a great insight into the mind of this predator. because it was 2 days before, you guys, 2 days before this 17-year-old had put a gun to this man. And I'll give you more of that in a second. So my husband was looking for apparently a moped, another one just to work on, because he had finished up the few that he had here. His sons, and he had one, and he enjoyed riding them and fixing them up. So I think maybe he was looking for a new project. I don't know. But he apparently met this guy, and some of the witnesses said that they could even see him sitting on the porch with the predator, just even laughing at one point. So, you know, it leaves your mind to a lot of speculation. And if I had to give some summary to it, none of us will ever know. The house was a part of the setup too. This guy had a whole, if there's such a thing as like a Mayberry moment, you know, for those of you that can know about Andy Griffin, you can go into a scene or a moment in time where things just seem comfortable. And for a person like myself, even if I drive in a certain area, or if I go up to a certain store, or if I see certain people doing certain things, I may not go in. I follow like, that doesn't seem right, and I'll just keep going. And so I'm sure my husband, being in his work van that day, in his work clothes, in the morning, mind you, it was 10 o'clock in the morning that he met with this 17-year-old. So I'm sure he did all his checks. The neighborhood happened to be a neighborhood of neighbors that lived there for a long time, so I'm sure the street was more, you know, manicured and kind of comfortable to go into, maybe if you just drove through it. And then the house that the predator was at was not his home, we found out later, but he would set people up to come here because this particular house was actually being sold. Somebody who owned it didn't have a sign out because they didn't want people to break into the house and steal the things because it was vacant. But they had put up new windows, new siding, painted. They had really made it look nice. So those that knew, and obviously he knew too. And so he was sitting on the porch when my husband pulled up for this item. Now I can't go too much detail because obviously I was not there. But I'm going to go back to the fact that he was sitting on the porch. And I'm going to say this to you. This is my speculation. I really believe that particular day when he was going to look for that bike, the predator the bike was a stolen bike, we found out later. It had already been sold. He came there purposely to rob my husband and to kill him, I have to say, because he had a military assault rifle that he shot him with in his back. In his back. Killed him, left him on the curb to die. So he had an intention, and it's in the morning. So Mike, if you're 17 years old, like 10:30 or something in the morning, and you're coming out to meet somebody, I mean, who would even think somebody's in that zone? I mean, I wouldn't think it. I think that it was later in the evening or in front of a place where a lot of kids are hanging out. I might think twice. But it's a nice home, a nice neighborhood, and you're sitting on a porch to sell an item. That's what I'm coming to see. So basically, at that point, I think, this is a speculation, that he was waiting on, they're sitting on the porch making conversation, knowing my husband's probably sharing some story about his kids. I'm sure it was some, like, you know, because this guy here was a 17-year-old, so he probably was sharing something about teenagers or mopeds or something, because he loved kids. He was a coach, a volunteer coach, and he just loved to be around kids, to take, you know, to encourage and just to support. Okay, so that was his nature. And I have to believe that there was something that at one point this guy must have said that the item was coming or something to stall time. And I think, knowing my husband, knowing that a job was going on across town, he probably said, well, you know, give me a call back when you have it. Now this is all speculation, but it had to be something at this point that he's like, okay, it's kind of, you know, it's morning, I got to get out of here, I got a job going, I got to get to. So the fact that he shot him in the back, there had to be a point where my husband realized something wasn't right and looked back, because they said he was, you know, making noise and running, letting it be known that he's letting it be known that there's a gun being pointed at me, because there were neighbors that had been outside, but now they were back in their prospective homes. So because he was making this noise, people came out to see what was going on, and they even had a witness of someone who saw what he did in terms of the actual shooting, of my husband trying to get away and him shooting him in his back. 2 days prior to that, this guy, the witness, that same situation, but it wasn't for a moped, I think it was for a gaming system, said that he was going, I guess, in the house to look at the item, he thought, or in the back, wherever this item was, but he had realized he had left his windows down on his car. He told this 17-year-old, who sets up the whole scenario. He comes, this is what the witness said. The witness said that he talked to him on the phone, sounded like a normal, you know, just a kid. And when he got there, he came off the porch and shook his hand, you know, like a person would do, like, oh, hi, sir, or whatever he did, just, you know, making the whole situation. This is how much he had strategized and fine-tuned his plan. So he shook hands and made conversation. He understood what it took to make a person feel comfortable. So at this point, he was taking him to somewhere, obviously to rob him, to see the item. Where it was, I don't know, because that was his case, but I do remember he said that he remembered his windows were down, so he was going back to put them up since he was going to see the item. And he said when he got to his vehicle, he felt like somebody was staring or behind him. And so this predator came up to him with this particular rifle. And I don't know why or how, but he, in that second, said he had his finger on the trigger. It was like a matter of seconds. He knocked it out of his arm, like kind of pushed it up, and it went off. I mean, it shot off. And somewhere in the middle of all his adrenaline or whatever was going on, he got in his vehicle, and this predator shot at his vehicle, but he did get away. Now, what that served for me was the fact that we got an insight of how he was so comfortable with his victims is the point of the story. That's the reason I even shared all that. So the fact that he was respectful and coming up to I can just see him being the same way with my husband, shaking his hand and making small talk. They're on the porch talking and laughing. So there had to be that comfort level. He just looking for blood. That's all there was to it. When you shoot somebody in the back and there's no item, no other reason to be there, you were looking for blood, and he was denied that 2 days prior to that. Made a point to go back to make sure that he would just I don't even want to, I'm not his analyst, okay, and I don't know why, and I leave it to God now. It's in God's hands because he is sentenced. And without me going through all of that again in terms of his case, you can actually look at the link below. I put down the trial link so you can actually see his face. And you can actually hear the judge, and you can hear all of us that actually spoke that day in the family room. The courtroom was packed with family and support, and letters had been written from friends and family around the state and out of town with people that loved Todd and knew Todd from school and from sports and from work, who had sent letters to the judge regarding this case. So he was well loved. Even though we had a lot of support, everyone that was there could represent and have their own story about Todd. So I'm going to leave it here at this point. I think this is a lot to take in and to share. But I just want to say that my life shifted. It changed completely. And as we go forward in these weeks, we're going to look at different components of that. And where that leads, I don't know. I believe that it's just, I'm just surrendering it to sharing it. And I think it's releasing that for me. And I think, in my opinion, I'm giving what I believe God wants me to share. And wherever he takes it and does with it is up to him. And that's where I'm going to leave it. So as we speak, completely a different shift. We're in 2017. My oldest is a senior now. My youngest is a freshman. Both boys who love their father, and he loved them. He was a coach dad. He just really, if you had to think of a hobby, he had found his love. He had found the fact he loved being a father. To his sons, yes. But to the boys in the community, he looked forward to their friends. He had already lined up how many games they were going to go to. Like, we're going to go see your friend play football. We're going to go see, the kids from the baseball team play basketball at their school. I mean, he was excited about this particular year. And for that to happen was just a shock. So for me, that's enough today. I just want to share with you where we're starting. I will tell you this, though, that from a spiritual side, and that's what this is going to really be, it's going to always be my spirit and my experience tied together, because I can't separate it. It's like being a wife, a mother, a daughter, a sister, a niece, a friend. You're one person, but you wear many hats. So for me, it's that. And I was in shock and went through days, and I had such a wealth of, I'm very blessed to have a lot of family and friends who we just, they just surround you in love and support while they're grieving as well, because we all grieve differently. But you guys, I believe if I had to leave something, if this was my last taping, let's say, and this is all I would do, I would say this to you. In my home, we did practice one thing. We loved on each other. And we had a lot of laughter in our home. And one of my favorite things, I'm looking at it on the back wall here now, it says live, laugh, love. It's a common, thing people hear all the time or see images of. But it's so true, We had a lot of laughter in our home. And like people that share a space, every day wasn't some gravy over potatoes. It wasn't like we were walking around like, the Brady Bunch. It was not the case. But we really just, kept, if it was such a thing as a bad day. In other words, like, how you're tense, you don't want to be bothered with somebody, they don't want to be bothered with you. We just gave each other space. We didn't make it where it was become so, tense and everything. It was just a natural thing to say, okay, agree to disagree or just leave each other alone, whatever it was. But the point of the story is that somehow we just knew that we had this moment. And I don't think that's something you define. It's just something you know. So if I had this, on this note, now that you know what has happened to me and now that you know where we're going with this series, I would just say that you have today. You're hearing this for a reason today. So if there are people in your life that you love and you care about, tell them that. You know, sometimes we just assume our actions do that. And sometimes they do, but it's good to hear it. And appreciate the fact that, you know, no one ever told you. No one ever told me. And this is something that I held on to. And I'm grateful that I did because it helped me in how much I did or didn't do in terms of my actions. But no one promised us that tomorrow will look the same as today. No one said that you're going to get up tomorrow and everything you're experiencing today is going to look exactly the same. You don't know. My life changed in an instant. In an instant. My husband left for work and I assumed I would see him that day. And my children thought they would see their dad. It wasn't even a question. It was like, I hope, are we going to see dad? No one questions that. So wherever you're at right now and hearing this, if nothing else you've heard that really helped you or did help you or whatever, this is like a buffet table. Take what makes sense for you. I would just tell you one thing. Look for ways to be peaceful. Look for ways to love on those people, even if it's just quiet. You don't have to always be, and maybe you're not the kind of person that says a lot of things, but maybe you can decide to be peaceful or not. Bring peace to your home or to your environment. Decide, make a choice. Even when people get on your nerves in your marketplace, in your job, in your home, whatever it is, choose not to engage. Let that person cool down, let things ride over, and then also say, I love you. Let that be an important part of what you do every day. All right, guys, that's enough for today. My name is Yvette, also known as my middle name, Danielle. You are here at my sandbox at helpingbuildbridgesacross.com. And the next time we meet, which will be next week, my plan is to have some things that we can make a difference. I don't want to just be sharing to share. I want to find ways to make what I've always believed in is gratitude becoming contagious. Let's take a lot of light and shine it bright in a very dark world. Let's make the choice that it's not what happens to us, is what we do with it that counts. So check out the link below if you want to see the actual court case of him being sentenced, the predator. And I have some theories on that too, believe it or not. Being a mother of a teenager, I have a lot to say on that subject, and we'll just see where that goes or doesn't go. But that's a whole nother scenario. Right now I'm going to close out. So just thank you for taking time with me today. And I hope it helps someone to know, if nothing else, you know, God will take care of you. If you spend time, I've spent time with him for a long time. I look for a relationship. I'm not interested in a religion. I'm not looking at how many things to read and 7 ways to do this and 10 ways to do that. I'm looking for a relationship because I have to die on my faith. I have chosen to die on my faith. So I'm not interested in just saying I'm a Christian. That means nothing to me. And if someone says it to me, that's great, but it still means nothing to me. What I'm looking for is a relationship. I'm looking for that, yes, this is what I'm experiencing, and yes, this is what happened. And there's a lot that happened days prior to this regarding my husband, which I'm going to share. Matter of fact, that's what we'll share next time. I'm going to talk to you about those days and weeks prior to this incident. It really has put something, it really has presented some things for me to consider, even in my spiritual walk. And they're good things. Things that I really have to say that makes you just wonder. Not answers, just sharing the experience. All right, until next time, you are here at Living in My Truth. My name is Yvette, also known as Danielle, and I'll see you next time.